Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bhakti Fundamentals. Today, we return with another question and answer session on the topic of destiny. We address the question, do we shape our own destiny, or does destiny shape us and our future? First of all, in our last question and answer session on the topic of reincarnation, which is linked to below in the description of this video, we concluded with the significant point that the real reason to understand reincarnation is to be able to act on that spiritual knowledge in order to exit what's known as the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, by cultivating consciousness of the Supreme Lord in our everyday lives. Spiritual knowledge is meant to transform our existence. In order to experience the benefits of spiritual knowledge, we're meant to act on it. Now, this, of course, suggests that we have agency or free will to decide how we act in this life, and therefore that we shape our futures. And of course, the Bhagavad-gita supports this conclusion. We do have free will to act, and we can and do shape our futures, whether we realize we're doing so or not. So today we discuss how we shape our futures, or as some might call it, our destiny. Firstly, if we look at the Cambridge English Dictionary, we learn that destiny can be used to refer to a few things, including the particular state of a person or thing in the future, considered as resulting from earlier events, and the force that some people think controls what happens in the future and which cannot be influenced by people. So these definitions are how people commonly use the word destiny. However, let's next look at what destiny is according to the authorized teachings of the Bhagavad-gita, which is spoken by the Supreme Lord himself. We learn in the Gita that destiny is not a sinister force controlling every aspect of our lives. Instead, what we sometimes call fate or destiny is revealed in the Gita to be the quota of happiness and distress that is in store for us in this lifetime as a consequence of our past actions, whether from this life or previous ones. Essentially, we are the architects of our own fortunes or misfortunes. Now, we've had a class on karma before, and we'll link to it below in the description of this video. And if you want the ins and outs of karma, you can head to that discussion. However, for our purposes here, it's helpful to understand that the Gita talks about karma, action on the material plane, and about personal responsibility for our actions, for our karma. From the Gita, we gain the understanding that our actions matter. By our actions, we forge our destiny and future destination. Here's a simple analogy, but say I have a sailboat. If I steer my sailboat toward calm waters, that action results in the predictable reaction that I will encounter a smoother outing than if I choose to steer it into choppy waters. We learn in the Gita that we can act in this world however we wish. We have free will, yet free will does not mean that we're not responsible for our actions. Rather, each of our actions has a concomitant reaction. We are responsible for our actions. In time, we receive the happiness or distress that results from our actions, which some people call destiny. So it is our own actions that drive our destiny. And the cosmic system that reacts to the decisions we make in life and brings to us their corresponding consequences or reactions of our actions is known as karma. To review some, at its core, karma is the law of cause and effect, of action and reaction. Though we cannot see it, the subtle law of karma is as real as the laws of motion and gravity. The law of karma applies to each and every one of our activities. Importantly, though, even though karma is exacting, the law of karma is not meant to be a system of punishment. It's meant to be a system for our edification and purification. We're meant to learn from situations in our lives and improve, and gradually become purified. And on that note, We can actually change our material destiny or karma through spiritual practices. We have free will within the scope of our overarching destiny or karmic situation. On this note, let's quickly review types of karma, because this will enable us to understand how we can effectively deal with our current set of karmic cards and how we can mold our futures to our best advantage. Prarabdha karma is the karma that is actively fructifying, that is already manifesting in our lives presently. This type of karma includes things like the bodies that we're in, our body's complexion and gender, the families and country we take birth in. This form of karma is the fully manifested result of our previous actions. We can change it now. However, bija karma refers to the seedling stage of karma, and this is karma that has not yet yielded its concomitant results. Unlike prarabdha karma, bija karma can be alleviated or eliminated through spiritual practices or sadhana. And this is because spirit is more powerful than matter. Matter is known in Sanskrit as prakriti. And the spirit soul, what we actually are, each of us is a unique individual soul, is by nature para prakriti, transcendental to matter. We are actually pure spirit souls. It's just that we're currently covered over by our material consciousness, the consciousness that leads us to believe that we are our material bodies or our material minds. However, as the soul, each of us a unique individual soul, we are always pure. Therefore, karma and the modes of material nature, which we will discuss in a future session, never actually touch the real us, the soul, even as our material bodies and situations change from lifetime to lifetime, we remain the pure spirit soul within. And importantly, this means that karma and the material modes of nature can only affect us materially. They affect our material situation from lifetime to lifetime. When we choose to falsely identify with matter, thinking that we are our material bodies, then the laws of the material world, including karma, apply to us, affecting our lifetimes in the material world. However, if we act spiritually, then we have the power to change our material situation or our material destiny. While it's true that our starting point in this lifetime is shaped by our past actions and the accumulated karma we carry into our current existence, how we respond to our present situation is entirely within our control. Our karma or destiny may set the stage for our initial conditions in life, but we are responsible for the choices we make from now on. Let's use an analogy for a moment and think of the material bodies that we inhabit as vehicles or cars. In this analogy, we're given a specific car, a specific body in this lifetime, but it's entirely up to us as to how we drive that car. We can drive recklessly and endanger our lives and others, or we can learn the rules of the road and drive cautiously. In a similar way, we can go this entire life not seeking out spiritual knowledge of who we are and how this material world works and what we're meant to do in this lifetime, or we can learn the rules of this material world and transcend them with spiritual knowledge. Krishna speaks the Bhagavad-gita so that we can learn all the rules of this material world, including karma and the modes of material nature and material time, etc., and then transcend this world of suffering with the spiritual knowledge that he provides. That's why he speaks the Gita. Now, taking a look at the Gita in its entirety, while Krishna does describe all about how this material world operates when he covers karma, reincarnation, the modes of material nature, material time, etc., the focus in the Gita, Krishna's focus, is on our taking responsibility for what is in our hands presently, our response to our situation. Let's look at the situation of the Gita. The battle of Kurukshetra is going to happen. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The abominable actions of the family members, known as the Kauravas, have necessitated it. Peaceful means had been completely exhausted, and everyone is just now gathered on the battlefield at the time that the Gita is spoken. This is like when we board an airplane and the plane takes off. Now we must stay on the plane until we reach our destination. That plane is taking off, or has taken off. However, we can still choose what we do on that aircraft. Some people read, others sleep, others drink alcohol or watch movies. The Bhakti Yoga practitioners would chant the Maha Mantra or bring a spiritual book, like the Gita, to read, perhaps. In a similar way, although the battle of Kurukshetra is going to take place, Arjuna is still free to decide to sit out and watch, to walk away, to fight under the direction of one of the material modes of nature, or to fight for Krishna, under the direction of Krishna, which would then be a spiritual action that does not produce material karma. Rather, it would produce spiritual results. And by the way, the latter is what Arjuna chooses to do. He chooses to act for Krishna, to do his duty to restore the kingdom to proper hands, and in this way he spiritualizes his activity. He fights the good fight for Krishna, and in the course of that, he helps rid the world of truly demoniac persons who were severely oppressing other people. Thus, Arjuna decides to act spiritually rather than for a material motive, and this brings up an important point. Material actions destine us for future material births in this temporary material world of misery and suffering. This is how Krishna himself describes this world in chapter 8 of the Gita, and we'll look at the verse in a second. However, spiritual actions destine us for a spiritual destination. And when we do reach that spiritual destination, we never return to this material world. Krishna says in chapter 8, verse 15, "After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion, or bhakti yogis, never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection." This verse is very hopeful because it describes what we have been discussing all along, that through spiritual life we can mold our future such that we exit this material world and therefore transcend its stringent laws. In the same chapter, however, and what we were discussing just a moment ago, Krishna also tells us in the Gita, in verse 3 of chapter 8, action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruit of activities. Thus, as we mentioned before, karma, or material actions, destine us for future material births in this material world. The more we engage in material actions, the more our consciousness becomes materially covered over, and the more we are bound by the laws of material nature, including karma. Thus, the more we act materially, the less freedom we actually have. By contrast, spiritual actions free us. They liberate us, the real us, the jiva or the soul, and destine us for a spiritual destination. Now, Krishna says that our consciousness at the time of death is particularly important in this regard. According to the Bhagavad-gita, our next destination, meaning next lifetime, depends especially upon the direction our consciousness points to at the time of death. It is our consciousness that carries us to our next body. And the direction our consciousness points to will naturally depend upon the activities that we have performed throughout our life. What we occupy ourselves with in our day-to-day life will be what we think about at the time of death. And Krishna says in chapter 8, verse 6, "Whatever state of being one remembers when one quits one's body, O son of Kunti, that state one will attain without fail." This verse covers the science of leaving our bodies. Krishna here explains that the scientific process is such that whatever we remember at the time of death for our body, when we leave our bodies, that state we attain. Of course, it's not desire alone that determines our next body. It's a combination of desire and action, our karma. We must also be deserving. Someone in high school may want to go to Stanford or Yale, but that desire alone will not get them in. They must also have high enough grades, have enough extracurricular activities, write a good college essay, and so on. Similarly, it is not that we will become rich and beautiful, say, in our next birth, merely by aspiring to wealth and beauty now. We must first act in such a way that we deserve those traits. Now, since we know that consciousness at the time of death is very important in deciding our next destination, then it follows that even more important than knowing the science of what happens at the time of death is knowing the spiritual art of leaving our bodies at the time of death. In other words, how should we leave our bodies? What should be our state of consciousness at that critical time? Well, in the fifth verse of chapter 8, Krishna says, "Whoever at the end of their life quits their body, remembering me alone," Krishna is referring to himself here, "at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt." We are meant to think of Krishna, the Supreme, in the final moments of our time in these bodies. We don't have to think of anyone or anything else, because Krishna is taking care of everything and everyone else, reciprocating with everyone according to their desires. So we can have faith in his words here, that we need only think of him at the time of death. He will take care of the rest. If we think of him, we will go to Krishna. He declares as much in this verse. He will take direct control of our spiritual destination. By contrast, if we take shelter of matter, the laws of material nature govern our material destiny and our material destination. However, if we take shelter of Krishna, he governs our spiritual destiny and destination. As he says in chapter 18, verse 66, "Abandon all varieties of dharma and just take shelter of me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear." Now, one other point. When we take up spiritual life to alter our own destination, we are then leveraged to help others change theirs. When we spread the Gita's teachings, we are essentially trying to help change the destiny that other people's karma has determined for them in this life and in their future lifetimes. When we do this, we become conduits of Krishna's mercy on others. We become his instruments. The understanding of destiny and karma that we learn through the Gita is not an excuse for not being compassionate toward others in regards to their particular destiny or karmic situations in this life. Ultimately, in Bhakti Yoga, our hearts are supposed to melt in love for the Supreme Lord, Krishna. And this softening of the heart outwardly manifests as the practitioners of Bhakti Yoga being what's called paradukha dukhi, or sad to see the sufferings of others. If we become hard-hearted and indifferent to others' material situations, then our own progress in Bhakti Yoga can become stunted. One time Srila Prabhupada observed children fighting dogs in Mayapur, India for food in a garbage area, and he was crying while watching this. He then said, "We have to see that nobody goes hungry within a 10-mile radius of our temples." He continued, "The temple is the house of God. God is everyone's father. Krishna is everyone's father. In the presence of the Father, the Son doesn't go hungry. We have to make an arrangement that people get fed." And this teaching of Srila Prabhupada's went on to become the basis for the regular prasadam food distribution that is carried out by Bhakti Yoga temples, which are also known as ISKCON temples, around the world. And of course, prasadam, which is vegetarian sanctified food that has been offered to Krishna prior to being consumed, prasadam spiritually elevates the consciousness of those who come into contact with it. So it spiritually nourishes people in addition to helping their material bodies. Now, let's conclude today's session with something Srila Prabhupada said that summarizes what we discussed in today's video. He said in one class on the Bhagavad-gita, "The body is made according to our past karma, and that is called destiny. Your happiness and distress according to the body is already settled up. It is not possible by natural, materialistic ways to improve it. It is already settled up. However, there is hope." Srila Prabhupada says in a room conversation on the topic of destiny, and in many other places, but this is one. He says, our destiny can be changed by Krishna when we are Krishna conscious. That we cannot do, but Krishna will. Krishna says, "Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami." I shall give you protection. So that change takes place for my protection by Krishna. The devotee is under the direct control of Krishna. So there we have it. When we act spiritually, Krishna himself intervenes to modify what would have been in our karmic cards in the future. Spiritual action is like a loophole in this material world. It allows us to bypass the laws of this material world. It allows us to transcend them and have a spiritual destination rather than a material one. This is not like airplanes in relation to cars on the ground below them. The plane is not subject to the traffic laws of the road. It can run all the red lights. Similarly, we can transcend the laws of the material world. We can transcend our material karma and our material destiny by engaging in bhakti yoga, in spiritual practices like chanting the Maha Mantra, which link us directly to Krishna and attract his help in our lives for navigating and ultimately entirely transcending this material world of suffering. So thank you for listening to our session today. That's all we have for now on the topics of destiny and destination. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time on Bhakti Fundamentals.